It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Jackiem Joyner. Hey, Jackiem, how are you?
Hey, Douglas. Thanks for inviting me back on.
Well, yeah, thank you.
I didn't break anything the last time. I guess that's what that means.
Nah, you did fine last time. And I enjoyed talking to you. You were on our video edition. Well, how long ago was that? A couple months now already?
Yeah. Because I know I was in quarantine, so it certainly had to be within the last few months, probably 4 months ago.
It was like the early part of the COVID, or right in the middle of the major problems in LA, yeah, with it.
Yeah. So, but now, they got a vaccine coming out, and it's towards the end of the year, and we'll see if I get back on the road finally and do some more music.
Yeah, I get a lot of musicians and performing artists on this show, and I really feel bad because so many, that's their bread and butter, is performing, They have just been stopped dead in the water. I know people have been doing online kind of performances, but you work with a band, right? So it's harder to do that.
Yeah. When I'm touring, I'm always touring with the band. So, that's just a standard operation. But, since the last time you and I talked, Douglas, I've actually put out a couple of little music videos from my living room, music videos.
Oh, good.
Quarantine music videos, whatever you want to call it.
And you're just playing solo?
Yeah, well, I'm playing
with
like
a backtrack,
yeah. And sometimes I'll talk to the audience or whatever. And I think I did live maybe like once.
Oh, okay. So you set
Facebook.
You set up, and then you have a backing track, and then you chat with people too when they come in. Yeah.
Yeah. I can chat with people, since I just released my book, I was talking about that. And then the music, and then some people have some songs to request or whatever. It's really casual and, more an intimate kind of a thing, just to, keep connected with my audience, since I haven't seen them in such a long time.
So just so people know who you are, you're a sax player. You play alto or tenor sax?
I play all the horns with soprano, alto, and tenor. I don't mess with Barry too much, but I'm mostly known on the alto saxophone. I've put out 8 albums. Most of them feature the alto saxophone as the primary, but of course I've released singles on the tenor sax and also on the soprano sax. I tour with Keiko Matsui. I play flute and soprano with her. She's a Japanese piano player.
I've heard of her.
And, you've heard of her?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I've toured with her for about 10 years. Performed with George Duke, Ronnie Laws, Marcus Miller, Marcus Johnson, Bobby Lau, Angela Bofill. So I've toured with and performed with a lot of artists in addition to doing my own music. But since I put out my first book, Zarya, which came out, which is a science fiction book. We talked about this on the last show.
Right.
I bring some of those on the road. Which they're heavy, book, because each book is about a pound. So now I'm carrying CDs and books to sell.
You mentioned Marcus Miller, and I'm very familiar with him. He worked with Miles Davis for quite a bit. And Miles is like my man. he is the choice for me when I'm just in a bad mood. And
Miles got that. He's got that cool sound. No one has ever been able to find that place that he has.
Yeah, that trumpet. To me, his trumpet, especially on his ballads, sounds like a crying voice, like a crying human voice, and it just hits you in that spot. And I have been a fan of Miles Davis. My mother was actually a Miles Davis fan. And so she had a lot of the old records. And I can remember listening as a little kid. I remember listening to Someday My Prince Will Come and Bye Bye Blackbird and some of the covers that he did. And they just, I thought, wow, this is just so cool. And I would just dance around and, and then as I got older, I got into him more and got to see him live once.
Oh, wow. Man,
I
would trade that seat from you any day to be able to see Miles. I mean, I'm from the younger, I'm from the younger generation. I'm not to give away your age on air.
Oh, that's all right. Everybody knows. I'm an old guy.
Yeah. So I'm 40. So
Oh, all right.
I don't know.
Well, we're one generation off because I'm 58. So.
Oh, okay. So yeah, there you go.
But I saw Miles in 90. It was like just a year before he died. But Miles was one of those people that was just good right to the end, which I kind of respect. And it was at the Boston Opera House, which was built in the 1800s, and it was a real cool old place. But they hadn't renovated it in years, and it was falling down. There was no air conditioning, and it was in July in Boston.
Oh, wow.
And it was a packed house. It was hot. Miles came out on stage in a full leather outfit, leather pants, leather jacket, and I thought, oh, that poor guy. He's just going to be dying up there in those lights. He played for 2 hours, never missed a lick. And then he just kind of walked off stage, and the band carried on for an extra half an hour after that. And that was it.
Wow.
Amazing show.
Man. Miles just needs to play a few notes in order to really get you. He doesn't need to play an hour or 2 hours.
No, but he
that
was,
must have been an amazing experience.
He was up there for 2 hours, but you're right. The way he plays, he does kind of the beginning and the end of the song, and the band takes their turns, goes around the circle, right? And they do their solos. But those 5 notes that he played, man, were just the sweetest notes you've ever heard. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. It doesn't take much. I mean, it's one thing I learned as a musician. You don't really have to play too many notes to really, just make those notes count.
Yeah. It's not how many, it's the quality, not the quantity. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Man, Miles.
Yeah. So
how did we get to Miles?
We got to Miles from Marcus Miller.
Yes. Oh, okay. Of course.
So tell us about Marcus. What have you done with him? What kind of work?
Well, Marcus, when I first came on the scene as a contemporary jazz sax player, I was performing on a jazz cruise. This was, I think it was 2007 it was. I was just kind of getting on the scene, getting my bearings there. I had a song at radio, so I kind of had a little name out there. People were like, okay, there's some young guy coming up or whatever. And I performed with him on the cruise. It was, who was performing? It was Marcus Miller. And I met him and performed with him, which was really interesting. I met him and performed with him the day that I met him because they had the way that they had the performances set up. And it was a Paul Jackson Jr., Rick Braun, and it was George Duke also on the stage. And I was, I was 27. So this was huge for me, and so it was just an amazing moment. And since then we've kept up, we've performed, I performed with him at the Berks Jazz Fest, the Capitol Jazz, and we text all the time. So it was just really, cause he's written so many amazing songs, he's a songwriter, so, and we've actually started talking about him even writing something for me. So he said he'd love to do it. So there might be a song coming out.
Oh, cool. Oh, I look forward to that. Did you ever get the chance to see I believe it was part of Miles's bio documentary that Marcus had some interview time on. Did you get to see any of that where he talked about his first meeting with Miles, kind of like his audition for Miles?
I think so. Yeah. He's mentioned some of that stuff on stage actually too. So I don't know if I've seen the actual interview. Maybe there's more there. Yeah,
because that was just a great thing where he said, Miles, I met Miles and he said, okay, what are we going to play? And he said, just play like D and F sharp or something like that. And then they started, and 2 seconds in, he stopped, and he says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I thought you told me to play D and F sharp." He says, "Don't play D and F sharp." And it just, it just kind of spiraled from there. And so, but Marcus,
funny.
Yeah, Marcus tells the story a lot better. But anyways, the whole point of the story was that Miles just wanted him to do what he was going to do. Do you know what I mean? He was just playing with him. And
do your thing.
Do your thing, exactly. So, let's see. You said you got a new book, right?
Yeah. Now this new book is it's a little different than my first novel, Zarya, which is Zarya is more in the science fiction. Teenager saves the world on a new planet from a oppressive government with flying drones and futuristic cities. So that's Zarya. That's the first story. This one is a bit more in the mystery suspense kind of crime thing. So this is a young boy from the suburbs of Las Vegas. His life is turned upside down by a horrific crime, but he's only 8 years old. So how can a kid fight back and win? He's taken in by mysterious strangers after a tragedy that happens in his house where he's hiding in the pantry. He gets whipped off to Japan, and he's there for 5 years. He learns to become this fighter killer, so to speak. He doesn't really want to kill, but he's looking for his sister, and he wants revenge against those who, while I'm giving the story away, I shouldn't. The Chinese and Japanese gangsters that came to his home and caused that tragedy. So he's comes back to Las Vegas. He's 13, and he's looking for his sister, who's supposed to be traded on the market and for human trafficking. So he wants to find her, and he also wants to get revenge. And detectives in Las Vegas are looking for him because they're like, who's killing off these bad guys, kind of a thing. So so that's Minor Assassin.
As I remember, the artwork on your other book, Zarya, was kind of Japanese anime looking. Is that right?
I wouldn't say Japanese anime. I mean, Zarya, she looks like an elf. She's got long ears. She has a tail. Kind of an in shape girl. I mean, it is animated. This one is more of a real. The cover on this is, you can't really see his face because it's kind of more hidden in the dark. He's wearing a hoodie. So, but it's not animation.
It's not animation. Okay.
Yeah, it's not animation.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else. I don't know. I do a lot of interviews,
Zarya is, of course, on the colorful side. She's, it is an illustration, and while Minor Assassin is a photo. But you really, it's very mysterious. So I'll send you a cover of it, and even a copy probably. So
how long has your new book been out?
This one literally just came out about a week ago, so it's pretty new. It was supposed to come out earlier. I kind of had to keep pushing the date back. Yeah. But I've been writing this book for probably 2 years.
Well, it's amazing how many people have finally gotten around to writing that book they've been meaning to write for the last 10 years because of the COVID. So,
yeah.
When you go out on the road with the band, you're not selling your books in the lobby as well with the T-shirts and stuff, or are you?
No. I mean,
it's separate, right?
It's at the end of the concert. After doing a show, there's a merch table. You can buy my CDs from that we performed. However, the book is also there.
So it is.
That's kind of
okay.
Yeah. So the book is there. I mean, I don't always bring the book because of the weight.
Yeah.
I mean, if you bring 20 books, it's 20 pounds. If you know about flying, when it comes to weight, they're very restrictive. And if you got a lot of equipment and all this other stuff. So it all depends on if it's a long, if I'm bouncing around city to city real quickly, I might not bring it. But if I'm just going, say, Philly for 2 days, I'll bring, maybe 30 books or something like that. So it's, not all the time.
Well, if you switched from sax to, I don't know, piccolo trumpet or something, you could really cut down what you're carrying for equipment, yeah? And bring more books.
Right. just change my entire profession.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I started playing the saxophone, It wasn't my first choice. Actually, the drums were my first choice, but I couldn't play drums because everybody wanted to play drums. So the band already had a million drummers. They said, try something else. I saw the trumpet, and it only had like 3 buttons. And I'm like, man, that's a limited instrument. Jeez.
Yes and no. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking at the time. I mean, now from all of the amazing trumpet players that I've met over the years, it is not that what I was thinking in high school. But I chose the saxophone. It looked more intimidating, challenging, mysterious, expensive.
Yeah, the sax is totally mystery to me. I don't know those buttons are just all over the place. And when you look at a saxophone, you think, Jesus, symmetrics with an S, to the instrument. Where the trumpet, everything's all nice, neat, laid out. The 3 buttons are right in a row, and it feels a little bit less intimidating, I guess.
But it's just, you don't know what does what.
Yeah, exactly.
So buttons on there. Yeah. It's a very fragile instrument too, I mean, there's lots of little springs and little hit things, one of those things go out of place, you'll spend hours trying to find the spring or whatever.
Yeah. Hey, we got to wrap this up. Our time is up, unfortunately.
Okay.
Give out your website so people come check you out.
Yeah, you can go to my website, which is JackemJoyner.com. If you want to get my books and read about them, just go to JackemJoyner.store. I'm on Facebook at Jackiem Joyner, Instagram at Jackiem Joyner. I connect mostly with everyone on Instagram, so follow me on Instagram at Jackiem Joyner.
Great. Thanks so much for coming back on the show. Nice talking to you, and I'm glad we got to talk about music this time around.
Cool. I had fun. Thanks, Douglas. It's been a pleasure.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Love coffee, huh? But wait a minute. It seems like every time you finish a cup of coffee, you get all of these side effects along with it. Heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, acid reflux. As the world's first and only organic acid-free coffee, Tyler's Coffee is able to provide a healthier option in the solution for more than 100 million individuals who have sensitive stomachs or suffer from acid-related modalities. This is Tyler's acid-free coffee. Coffee without the consequences.
Hi, this is John Morgan, production supervisor for DJC Productions. You're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, please welcome to The Douglas Coleman Show, Chris Humphreys. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hello. I'm very well indeed.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
You and I are both fellow thespians, I think is the way that's pronounced.
Yes, it is.
You studied drama in London, and I studied drama in New York.
Well, there we are.
But it looks like you've made a better career of it than I did. I didn't do much of anything in acting and ended up working for 20 years in corporate environment. Now I'm doing radio and television. So.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you got there by a different route, that's all. You're still, in front of the camera and the microphone now, so.
Yeah, 20 years later.
Yeah, no, I got into it. I studied in London at the Guildhall, and then I've been a professional actor now for, God help me, 42 years. 42
years. Wow, that's impressive.
Yep.
So, primarily theater?
I've done a big range of things. The cliche, of course, first love. My first love is theater, and I try to return to that as often as I can. But I've done a ton of television and quite a number of movies as well. Interestingly, right now, I'm primarily making my living, which is kind of appropriate in these times, as a audiobook narrator.
Oh, well, that's good. That's a good job, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
No.
Yeah, it's great. I do it from my my little studio here, which is really a duvet fort in my hut on Salt Spring Island, and get to record. I'm recording a huge book on the Norwegian resistance right now, actually.
Duvet fort. We used to call them blanket forts when we were kids.
Yeah, basically the same thing. Just lots of soft muffling material to help deaden the extraneous sounds.
So you've also got a book, I believe, while you're here to promote your book.
Yes, indeed. Well, I've got a number of books. I'm delighted that you'll be able to have this as the Canadian exclusive. Or is this in America? Am I speaking to you in America? No, Canada.
No, I'm in Las Vegas. It's an American show.
Oh, you're in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you are. Well, you've got the American exclusive then. This is my 20th novel, is published today.
20th novel. Okay.
My 20th novel, yes.
Wow.
And which I still am more than a little stunned to say, because really I wrote my first novel, The French Executioner, 18 years ago, and thought, right, that's it, tick that box, novelist now, I can move on, Little did I know, and here we are. The novel that came out today, number 20, is the oh, I'm sorry, my dog's gone mad.
Oh, that's all right.
That's right. I've got a corgi here, and he's very protective if anything goes past the house. With the book we're talking about at the moment is the third book in a trilogy that I published today, called the Tapestry Trilogy. And the first two books were published by Penguin Random House at different times over the past few years. The first one, The Hunt of the Unicorn, was published by Knopf in New York and was reasonably successful, did quite well. The second book, The Hunt of the Dragon, was published by Doubleday in Toronto and didn't really do much at all. It was a few years later. So I decided, I love these characters, I love this whole world that I'd created, and I decided to round it off with a third book and make it a trilogy. And called it the Tapestry Trilogy because it deals at least partly with the amazing unicorn tapestries in the cloisters in New York, which you've probably been to, right?
Yeah.
Studied there.
Yeah. I'll get back to The Hunt of the Unicorn in a second because that's the one I've got here.
Okay.
But I did want to ask you about your dog. I've got
he's staring up at me now. I wish you could see. He's looking he's a corgi and he's got enormous ears and he's staring up at me longingly. So...
First of all, he sounded much larger than a corgi. The bark sounded like a much bigger dog. So when you said he was a corgi, I was sort of shocked that a little dog like that could make such a low, resonant growl and bark like he did.
He's fierce. He punches above his weight.
It sounds like, yeah. I've got my two dogs right here in the studio. They always come in with me when I do audio. They can't be in the video.
What are they?
One is a German Shepherd, and the other one is a mixed poodle and Shih Tzu, who is a very opinionated dog and completely dominates the German Shepherd, which is 5 times his size.
Of course. I love German Shepherds. When I was a kid, I lived from Canada. I went to Los Angeles for 4 years, actually, and grew up in L.A. And my father bred German Shepherds when we were in L.A.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good job.
So I grew up with puppies.
So you know their temperaments, and you know they're just wonderful dogs and unbelievably smart.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, good. Nice to meet a fellow dog lover.
Oh, yes, indeed.
All right, let's get back to your book, The Hunt of the Unicorn. Can you give us just a synopsis of it?
Sure. It's interesting how it began because Knopf, I'd written a trilogy of fantasy for them before, and they asked me to write something else, and I was bereft of ideas. I mean, in the fantasy realm, I'd planned to be a historical fiction writer, and so fantasy had just sprung out of nowhere. And after 3 books, I thought, what am I going to write now? And I was literally sitting in my office playing with my signet ring, which happened to be on my finger, going, what am I going to write? Why do I wear a unicorn on my finger? And because I have a signet ring. It's supposedly the family crest, which sounds very grand, but it was actually adopted by my great-grandfather, who was a horse auctioneer, decided he needed to be a gentleman. But it is the rampant unicorn. And I thought, what does a unicorn mean? And I started researching it, and the first things that really came up was, 1, a unicorn needs to be, can only be tamed by a maiden. A unicorn is indomitable otherwise. And secondly, there's the second thing that came up, where these tapestries, the unicorn tapestries, which are in the cloisters, as I said before, in it's the medieval wing of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And I thought, well, hello, if I'm a writer, I like to set my books places I like to go. I love New York. Why didn't I set the book there? So that set me off partly on that road. And I then began my more serious research into unicorns and into the tapestries. And I immediately saw the tapestries as a sort of portal, a gateway to another world, kind of like the wardrobe in Narnia. You step out of one realm and you're into another. And so in my conceit of this, the tapestries lead to a place called Goloth, which it's the land of the fabulous beast, where all our myths live. So right there is all the mythological creatures that supposedly existed in our world and vanished. That's where they came from, and that's where they returned to when basically Earth got too hot for them. And it's a medieval world as well. There are humans there, and living in a sort of a Middle Ages kind of kingdom. Quite a small number of them, and in present-day Manhattan, a young lady called Elaine, though her full name is Alice Elaine, is summoned by a unicorn called Moonspill through the tapestries. And the reason she can go is that it was actually her ancestor who wove the tapestries. And 500 years before, he wove a doorway for the unicorn to return to his proper world, to escape the earth, and made a deal with the unicorn that if either of them needed the other, somehow they would return. And 500 years later, Moonspill, the unicorn, needs a maiden for taming purposes, basically. He needs to get into the city and free his mate, who's being held prisoner by the tyrant king, and he summons Elaine. And she is, of course, petrified, and B, very quizzical and cannot believe in this whole world. And certainly is, she goes to a private girls' school in New York. She doesn't learn about unicorn taming or anything. But in a series of adventures in this other world, where she not only encounters unicorns, but two-headed snakes called the Amphisbaena, who gives her the gift of tongues, because they were the teacher of language. And so her one superpower is she's able to speak any tongue instantly, and that includes the tongues of fabulous beasts who could all speak as well. And so, won't give too much away, but through a series of adventures, both in Golof and then back in New York, where she has to return because her father's, in fact, seriously ill with cancer. And I won't, as I say, give too much away, but that brings me to the other thing I learned about unicorns, was that they are able to cure poison and disease and illness with a touch of their horn, which factors into her story back in Manhattan. I won't say anything more than that.
You mentioned Narnia. Does this story have a Narnia-esque sort of feel about it?
I would say not a feel so much. It's more, I loved the Narnia books when I was a kid. This is not aimed at, I read them at 7 or 8. You wouldn't read this, The Hunt of the Unicorn, or the subsequent books at 7 or 8. I'm not a great believer in separating out the genres. Oh, this has to be YA, therefore teenagers must read it, and this is adult. I just try to write the best book I can. Hunt of the Unicorn actually was runner-up in quite a big prize out in British Columbia in Canada, where I live, and it was runner-up in the adult fiction category. So a lot of adults have read it as well. There's nothing particularly, ghastly and contentious in it in terms of content that would put off teenagers as well. But it's a fantasy story. So it shares that with Narnia. There's a fully realized other world that has a sort of medieval flavor and a magical element to it. So that also means that it's Narnia-esque. Is that a word? I don't know.
Yeah, Narnia-ish.
Narnia-ish, yes. Yeah. And so in that way it does. It does have similarities.
Okay.
And you do, like in Narnia, have the full array of fantastic, what we call mythical beasts. The manticore and the griffin. There's a big griffin element in the story, which is, as all your listeners, erudite listeners, will know, is half eagle, half lion. And then, of course, in the second book in the series, The Hunt of the Dragon, obviously the dragon appears then. The dragons have been sleeping both sides of the tapestry, actually, and awake in book 2. So then we're dealing with a dragon. And the dragon, unlike the unicorn, is not a kind animal.
Does anybody know where that unicorn came from, the original one? Because it seems to be all over the place. It seems to be in and out of the Zodiac. It seems to be in mythology for centuries.
Yes, I think the first person, if I remember my research correctly, the first people to sort of deal with it were Greeks. They posited the idea of the unicorn. And it's also true that man has believed in the unicorn far longer. The absolute reality of the unicorn far longer than they haven't. It was only really in the sort of rational 19th century that people started going, no such thing. But that image of a creature with a horn. Some people say it was stories of I can't remember the name of it suddenly. One of the famous antelope type animals in Africa with the very long straight horn. And it served a purpose. Like all those mythological creatures did. It represented certain things. And that then got sort of put into different contexts depending on which society was trying to use it. And it became quite a Christian symbol. Of course, it became sort of a symbol of purity, and the amazing unicorn tapestries in New York are filled with Christian imagery, and they were. The great thing about them, and of course the real gift for the novelist, was that they are a giant mystery. No one knows who made them. No one knows who they were made for. The only thing people know is that they were roughly made around this time, late 15th century. They were roughly made maybe in Flanders somewhere, and they would have cost an absolute fortune. And the other thing is because they're full of gold and silver thread. Real gold and silver thread. So there would have been a huge team of people making them. And the other part of the mystery is that in the corner of each tapestry is the initials linked together, A and E. And so, of course, that was another gift for me. I was able to say, Alice Elaine. She's the one who is part of this tapestry.
The animal you were referencing is called a gazelle, the one with the long horns.
A gazelle?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, with that, we do have to wrap up the interview. What is your website that you want to give out?
My website is authorchrishumphreys.com.
Okay, great. And the book is out?
Yeah, the book is out, literally came out yesterday. So I just started sort of publicizing it a bit today. But it's the first book, The Hunt of the Unicorn, is available for 99 cents for a limited time. So if people want their own entry, their own tapestry door, they can start there, and it's available on Kindle, and you can get it on print on demand at Amazon as well.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was nice talking to you, and best of luck with your book and everything else.
Douglas, thank you. I really appreciate it. From one thespian to another, I hope you have a great day.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.